Today we're going to talk about how to market a video game, specifically the game called Sephiroth Protocol. And this video is being made directly for the developers of the game, but if you're watching this and you're developing your own game, you'll probably learn a lot about this. And if you're just interested in the game as a player, we're going to be going through kind of a review of where the game is at currently in development. And while I'm going to be talking about game mechanics and things that can be improved or changed in the game, what I want this video to be, rather than just a kind of suggestions video, is I want to take a marketing angle to this. And to do that, let me quickly introduce myself. My name's Garen. I've been making YouTube content for 20 years. This is one of the first YouTube channels I built. It reached 195,000 subscribers like 8 years ago. It's dropped since then because I haven't posted on a long time, but I made roughly about $250,000 from this channel, and I've been making YouTube content for 20 years. In fact, I just launched a new series of content around psychology on my Instagram, which has gained about 250,000 views in the past 3 weeks. This is my Instagram if you want to check it out. I've also done TikTok. One of the first videos I ever made on TikTok did 2.1 million views and got me 48,000 subscribers. I have marketed and made content from business to video games. In fact, one of the business companies that I did was Composer.trade, which is currently trading $20 million in the stock, or $20 billion a year in the stock market. And I developed their entire community back when they were trading less than $100 million in the stock market. And this is actually the community that I developed for them. I haven't actually posted in this community in over a year, but you can still see that there's people active and, sticky. They're still engaged in this community and still working on it. So not only do I know how to market content, I also know how to get people invested and sticky into a community, a service, or a product. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So while this video is going to be going over the game and the current state that it's in, the angle that I want to take this video is not just a guy who plays video games talking about like feedback, but a professional marketer talking about how to market a video game to make more money and grow the game, because I think it is a really good game, and I want to state that real quick. While we're going to be talking a lot about different things in this video game, the point of this video is to give feedback from a professional marketing perspective on how to grow the game, and then we're going to talk about mechanics and micromanagement and kind of the current state of the game and what I see could be improved in the video game. And real quick, lastly, I also coach marketing. So this is one of my clients who's a fitness coach. When he met me, he had 200 followers, and in 10 months, he is now up to 44,000 followers. So not only do I know how to do this stuff for myself, I actually coach people on how to do this. And then lastly, I will quickly go over like my game background. So I have been playing video games since I was like 3 years old, before I could even spell my ABCs. And I was playing RTSs when RTSs became a genre. So like Warcraft 1, Command and Conquer. I have been playing RTSs for a very long time, 30 years. And I was actually top 1,000 in AoE 4 upon launch, and I was also top 1,000 and 5,000 in Company of Heroes 2 and 1. And I've also been a part of very big communities in video games that grew video games. So this is a video called Days Ahead, which was launched 13 years ago, and it was the video that blew up DayZ. So this was the Shack community, which was ran by Dyslexy, and I think they still run it, and they work directly with Bohemia Interactive to do a lot of their marketing material for Arma 3, and I was actually part of this community during the DayZ blow up and a part of that entire genre of games, which eventually spawned Battle Royales and PUBG and DayZ and Tarkov eventually, and the entire genre of Battle Royales. I was also a part of a clan called Devil Dogs in PlanetSide 2 upon launch, and we were like a 3,000 man community, and I was actually in charge of the entire infantry division, which was like 1,000 people, and we worked directly with Sony Online Entertainment for their promotions and videos. This is actually my squad in one of their promos. Like, this is my clan and me operating and organizing this entire thing in the live events that Sony Online Entertainment's launched during this phase. And this is actually a really great time in my experiences with video games. And in fact, my community development and experience in video games led me to developing community development and business and stuff. So all of the stuff that I learned in how to build communities in video games translated into business. But let's go back to the question. How does Cephirus Protocol make an extra $200,000 of revenue off of new users? And as a marketer, the first thing that my brain automatically goes into marketing content creation mode anytime I'm doing anything. And as soon as I saw Cephirus Protocol, I can't remember the video I saw, but I jumped on YouTube and I started searching, and I noticed really quickly there's not a lot of content in this about this game, and it was kind of hard to learn the game because there wasn't content on it. And then I started playing it and I started kind of seeing why there's not a lot of content on the game. And as the game's been in development for over 5 years, I'm assuming it started as a passion project and it's grown into something more. I don't know what the current goals are of the development team for you guys, for the developers watching this. I don't know if you just want to keep this as like a passion project in a small niched game, or if you're actually wanting to scale this game. I don't know if you want to have your like an actual game studio where you're developing more games and stuff. I'm assuming you do, because that's probably the dream with a lot of game developers. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is marketing a video game from somebody who does professional marketing. And the first thing I want to talk about real quick is what's called ROAS, or return on advertising spend. And this is going to become very prevalent and important later down the road, but I'm going to explain to you very quickly, mathematically, how to make $200,000 marketing your game. So ROAS is just a measurement of how much it costs to market something. And I'm currently launching a new business around psychology, and I'm rolling out some services which are going to be low ticket, paid. They're going to be 1 to 2 hour, sometimes 7 hour little mini deliverables that solve a specific problem for my clients. And I'm going to start at a $47 price tag. I will probably ramp this up to $100 or more, depending on how much I can push it before I start seeing a degradation in conversion and sales. But we're going to start out at $47, and I've already ran ads through my meta campaigns. These are a bunch of ads that I ran actually on the content on my Instagram. So you can see here 200,000 and 260,000 views on these two pieces of content, which will be used as marketing material for this service that I'm selling here. And the return on advertising spend was about 5 cents, but that was just to get people to my social media to follow, to kind of get traction in the algorithm. I'm expecting somewhere between a 2 to 3 ROAS on this content. So the way that you can do a quick calculation to see how much money you're going to make selling something is very simple. So if your price tag is $47 and your ROAS is 3, your cost of advertising for me to run one ad and get a customer is going to be roughly $16. If it's a 2 ROAS, which is lower, if I do 47 divided by 2, it's going to cost me roughly $23, which means that $23 will also be made in profit, which is not a great ROAS, but it's a starting point. And now this gets to calculating how much revenue you will actually make off of an ad or promoting your game in this case. So Cephirus Protocol is $20. And the way that we can calculate how to make $200,000 is very simply by using a standard metric in marketing. So in marketing, usually you can aim between 0.5 to 3% conversion on a piece of content. So the content I ran got about 500,000 views on those few pieces of content. So let's take 500,000 times, let's do 1%. That would be 5,000 customers. If I'm selling at a price tag, if I'm making a profit of $23.05 off of my content, that's $117,000. If you're selling a game at $20, let's say a piece of content comes out for Cephirus Protocol and 1% converts. And we get 1 million views on that piece of content. So 1 million views on 1% conversions is 10,000 new users times $20 per sale, $200,000. Now, it's not guaranteed that the conversion will be 1%. If you want to do a low end, you would do like 0.5% or even 0.25%. So let's do 1 million views, 1 million new eyes on the piece of content, and 0.5% of them convert to sales. That's 5,000 new customers at $20. You're making $100,000. So that's the simple math behind how to calculate how to get new users and run paid ads. But you're probably wondering, how do you run paid ads and how do you get people to do that? And like, what's the mechanics behind doing that? So that's what we're going to get into now. But before we get into that, we have to talk about something that I see as a core issue in the current state of the game, which is, what is the core fantasy for the player? What's the North Star or the design pillar of Sephiroth Protocol? And it's not exactly clear to me what that is, and I want to explain this concept using other games as a contrast so that we can then get into Sephiroth Protocol and where it's at right now. So I've got a few games here: Helldivers, Company of Heroes, Beyond All Reason, PlanetSide, Arma, and Rust. And I'm using games from different genres to kind of encapsulate this. So Helldivers, I think, is actually one of the best modern examples of marketing done really well for a video game. If you were there and remember the launch of Helldivers, within 2 weeks, the game exploded in popularity. And if you look at the user base or the statistics on Steam and the growth rate, it's just crazy how fast that game grew. And as a marketer, I immediately began dissecting and trying to understand what exactly occurred here for Helldivers to explode when it comes to marketing versus other games. Now, obviously, they had great branding. They had a great, funny comedic spin on their marketing, similar to Starship Troopers. They took the Starship Troopers kind of genre and funniness and put it into their marketing. But that's not exactly what grew Helldivers. What grew Helldivers is they created a game that targeted a specific type of content, short form, on TikTok, that they mastered. They got a quick 10 to 15 second clippable content. And if we go to TikTok right now and you just look at Helldivers content, all of the content is perfectly articulated for quick little 10-second amazing clips. And this is the user experience of marketing. So they nailed their entire game mechanics and feel for the game to be funny, and also, like, when you see the content for the first time, you're like, what is this game? What is this? Is interesting. And it piques interest and it piques curiosity, which then drives the person to consume more content and eventually buy the game. And that's what we're going to focus on in this video. So there's other games, Company of Heroes. They focused on platoon level micromanagement. So if you've never played Company of Heroes, if we go search Company of Heroes 2, which is a very old game, it's over 10 years old, you'll see a lot of the content in the short forms. They're usually artillery or epic units like this bombard cannon that has this huge explosion. And you see a similarity there between Helldivers and Company of Heroes. And in the genre, in the time period when Company of Heroes 2 launched, which was like 2008 or something, super early in content creation, a lot of the content really focused around epic units, King Tigers, these bombard cannons, panzers, and artillery. So artillery was another big thing for Company of Heroes 2, and that really helped scale and grow the marketing of the game. Now, in contrast, Company of Heroes is a completely micro ability hotkey. You're controlling squads. You have maybe 7 to 10 units on the field at any one time. There's no base building. And a game like Beyond All Reason is a completely different angle on RTS, which is basically you're an industrial war god. If you look at content for Beyond All Reason, it's an entirely different type of marketing and content, all designed around massive 32,000 unit battles. And one, that's novel. That's a very new thing in content or in RTSs, but it creates a different experience for the player, and all of the content is geared around that. There's almost no hotkey abilities in Beyond All Reason. It's all geared around just being an epic industrial machine where you base build and you throw massive amount of units at your enemy and you eventually overwhelm them. And then we have PlanetSide and Arma, which are basically single soldiers, but in a grand strategy war. And you're just a regular player, but you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's the fantasy, is like, I'm just a grunt who's like everybody else, but I can have an impact on the game and on the ability of the team to win. And then lastly, we have Rust, which is one of my favorite games and is an extremely successful game when it comes to marketing. And this game really nails the psychology of like survival, tribal mentality, like paranoia, hoarding materials, raiding, loss, and domination. It takes like the Tarkov gear fear and it just amplifies it, but on a tribal level. You have teams and clans, and it activates that part of the brain when you're like 13 to 15 years old and you just want to like be a caveman, basically. It really nails that emotional experience. And that's what a core player fantasy is. It's not so much about the mechanics of the game. The mechanics aid the fantasy that you're trying to portray, both in the content creation and the actual experience of the player. So I'm going to run through quickly these two RTSs and compare them into Sephiroth Protocol. We have Company of Heroes, which is fully focused on like platoon level commanders. You're doing squad level controls. It's all hotkeys and abilities. And the early, mid, and late game phase of this RTS, and every RTS follows phases, which we'll talk about with Sephiroth Protocol in a minute. The early part of Company of Heroes is all about aggressive play and harassment and seizing control of the map. It's entirely around controlling map. Mid-game, you start to be able to read your opponent and read what's going on and what they're doing, and you start building counter units, and you get into the rock, paper, scissors scenario of RTSs, which we'll talk about with Sephiroth Protocol as well, and you build your units and your strategy to basically counter your enemy. And usually most mid-game games are won through your skill level of hotkeys and countering your enemy. Now, if you don't win mid-game, the late game is usually ended by elite units coming out and crushing a stalemate, which is like the Bombard Cannon or the King Tiger or the Pershing in the US Army, or artillery strikes for the Russians. And that is the phases of the game that it goes in. And right now, Sephiroth Protocol really doesn't have phases clearly defined in their game, but we'll come to that in a second. And then lastly, the Company of Heroes skill and depth. Like the Company of Heroes is a game that anybody can jump into and begin to play, but the skill level is very wide, and your ability to micromanage and hotkey and counter your enemies is what differentiates a low-skilled player from a high-skilled player. And when it comes to content creation, the main focus of Company of Heroes, and they kind of failed at this on Company of Heroes 3, is massive artillery bombardments and elite units crushing front lines and stalemates. Now, in contrast, I didn't write this all out, but Beyond All Reason is completely the opposite of Company of Heroes. Everything around Beyond All Reason is basically macroeconomics, macro scale battles, and snowballing your team with eco builds or air raids to the point where you basically just overwhelm the enemy. And everything in the game is designed around this. So the game is fundamentally designed around multiplayer and massive team battles. And it also has mechanics like ELOs and ranks and PvE to allow new users to come into the game and quickly jump in and learn the mechanics on a safe and comfortable level of playing bots, but eventually move into the PvP. And then through that progression in their skill development, and they also jump on YouTube and start watching content on early builds and how to scale their economy, that entire experience of the content and learning the game makes the person sticky and stay in the game and continue playing it. And the stickiness of a video game is very important. And then we're going to talk quickly just about Helldivers, because it's kind of going to be the core example I use for Sephiroth Protocol, because I think the lessons from Helldivers is going to be very useful in the marketing of Sephiroth Protocol, depending on the direction that the developers want to take the game. I'm going to just make my suggestions. You don't have to listen to them. But Helldivers, everything is designed around you basically being at a very elite unit, but disposable. And their marketing and their ad hoc comedy and, the Starship Troopers type of vibe, everything about the game is designed around you kind of being this really elite unit, but you're going to die. Like, you will die. But we're going to give you a tremendous amount of artillery and dispensable units or dispensable equipment to basically make your experience epic. So all of the call-ins, all of the mechanics around the game is basically epic moments that you get to experience as a player, but you're just a disposable unit. So now let's talk about Zephyrus Protocol and where it's currently at in development. And again, I know the game is currently being ported over a brand new engine into Unreal and doing multiplayer, and there's a lot of bugs and stuff, and not all of the mechanics are into the game. And I know what the game was in the early legacy build, which is basically civilian extraction and managing the horde. But when I look at the current state of Zephyrus Protocol, I'm confused as a player as to like what exactly is the game. Is it a base building defense civilian extraction game, or is it a zombie PvE co-op horde clearing game? Or there's a direct control mechanic in the game, which is taking over the operators and playing as a first person shooter. Is it that? Is that the core experience that I'm going for as a player? Personally, I've barely ever used the operators. I think that there's way too much micromanagement in the game to ever take your eyes off of the map of the game to play as a operator. So I don't ever do it, and I haven't ever seen many other people do it as well. Or is it a hotkey ability micromanagement game? There's a lot of units in the game that have abilities that are unique to them, and there's a lot of micromanagement around those hotkeys and those units. Or is it a multiplayer co-op game? So the new engine is multiplayer, and is the main focus in the future as the game develops going to be centered around multiplayer co-op? There's like 5 different angles that the game is going towards, and when it's not clear what the player fantasy is, like what the North Star is of the game, it can kind of dilute and take away from any of them. It's like the concept that if you're a jack of all trades, you're a master of none. And all successful games, they focus on being a master of one. They don't usually try to do other things. They can have mechanics that are dissimilar from each other, but the question is, what is the core experience that the user is going through? Now, quickly, I want to talk about complexity of depth versus width in a game. So a game like League of Legends is an extremely complex game. There's 170 different characters, and to master League of Legends, it takes years of play, and even the top level players don't master all of the characters that they play. They play usually 1 to 3 characters, but they know through just game experience how to counter most characters. And I want to contrast that, because what that is that's complexity in width. It's complexity wide ways. And the reason that complexity and width is really good in a game is because it makes it easy for a new player to come in and start playing. Fundamentally, even though it's a complex game, you can jump in as a new player, and you only have 4 abilities that you can do for any character. And that simplicity allows new players to come in and easily get into a match, and along with ranking and elos and the bronze, silver, gold, and all that, it allows you to play the game in a safe and comfortable way that allows you to develop your skills, but eventually master them if you continue to play. If you contrast that to a game like MechWarrior 4, which is a really old game, and I don't know if anybody was around for that time or how old the developers are, but MechWarrior actually had a controller that it came out with, and it was just an extremely complex game to play. Now, complexity is not a bad thing in games. For example, Tarkov is an extremely complex game and a really hard game to play, and that's okay. There are times when complexity is good in a game, but the core thing there is that complexity is the core mechanic. It is the core philosophy or the player fantasy. When you play Tarkov, the sense of gratification and win that you get is by being able to master the complexity. So you understand that it's complex and it's hard, and all of the mechanics, the gear fear, you die and you lose everything. Everything around the game is designed to funnel the player into experiencing the complexity. And as they master the complexity, they get a sense of reward and accomplishment, which is what makes the game sticky. So let's talk about AoE 2 real quick. Age of Empires is a phenomenally successful RTS. It's 20 years old, and it still has a massive player base. And Age of Empires 2 takes a League of Legends approach to the player experience. There's a bunch of different empires, but fundamentally, each empire fits a standard model. So every single empire, no matter which one you play or civilization you play, there's basically anti-cavalry units, anti-archer units, anti-infantry, anti-cheap units, anti-buildings, anti-monks. And it doesn't matter what civilization you play, you're going to have some form of these units. Some will be stronger than others in their focus, but it doesn't matter if you start playing as the Byzantines and you master the Byzantines and then you go play the French. You're going to be able to translate your skills and your game knowledge to the new civilization. You're just going to have to learn the unique units and the unique civilization benefits. And that creates complexity in width versus complexity in depth. And what I'm seeing with Sephiroth Protocol right now is there isn't a lot of complexity in width. It's all complexity in depth. And because it's complex in depth, it creates a high skill ceiling and a high level of game knowledge required for a new user to come in and start playing and stay sticky. And that can be very damaging for keeping players in the game long term. So that's the preamble of this video. That's kind of the angle that I'm taking this from now on. And what we're now going to talk about is actually Sephiroth Protocol and the current state of the game and the mechanics and just suggestions and feedback from a marketing perspective. So as a game developer, you're probably familiar with user experience or player experience, but you probably think about it from the moment the person buys the game. So you probably think somewhere in here. You know, you need a tutorial, you need to explain the mechanics, you need to show the user how to play the game and how to win the game. And this is really what you're focusing on in the player experience of the game. But what I want to shift your focus from is to just move your focus forward into the marketing experience of the user. So this is the marketing experience that a player goes through when they purchase a game. They see a video on social media, usually their preferred social media, whether on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. Usually in the world that we live in today, it's short form. They're going to see a short little clip or video, and they're going to go, that looks interesting. What is this game? And their interest gets piqued. They get curiosity. And then they jump onto YouTube or Twitch or whatever their social media is, and they start consuming more content around the game to decide whether they want to play the game or if it fits what they're looking for. And then once they decide that this seems interesting, which is the marketing phase of any business, they move into the sales side, which is purchasing the game and loading into the first game. Now, every business, whether you're selling a product or a service or a game, which a game is just a product, you have three phases. You have the marketing, which is making the person aware that you exist. Sales, which is convincing them to pay money for the service or product that you're selling. And then the actual deliverable, you're servicing the client, you're giving them the product or service, and you're completing whatever it is that they are wanting out of it. So that's what I want to do is I want to shift the focus of the developers that are watching this from just focusing on the gameplay experience and the user experience in the game to thinking at the very moment the person becomes aware that your game exists. And if you master that sequence of marketing to sales using your game mechanics and using the design of your game, you will increase the number of users and you'll increase the scale of your game. So in order to market your game or business, you have to select the type of content that you want to focus on. And if you've never studied marketing, any good marketer is going to tell you, focus on one type of content on one platform. Don't try to do YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. As a professional marketer who's been doing this for 20 years, I still follow this rule. My marketing for this new business is going to be predominantly Instagram. I will be making long form content on YouTube because I've been doing it for 20 years. But if I was brand new to social media or if I was coaching somebody on social media, I would adamantly tell them, do not focus on any other content other than one specific type of content. You have to pick a platform and you have to pick a type of content. Are you doing short form? Are you doing mid form? Are you doing long form? Are you doing streaming? So let's walk through the options of Sephiroth Protocol right now in the current state of the game as to what content can be created. And then you'll also see why there isn't a lot of content on this game because of this. So the first one is Twitch and streaming, which is usually just high-level gameplay. You have like extremely experienced pro-level players that are streaming, and that brings in views, which brings in new users, and it scales your game. Or they're very entertaining gameplay, like Peanut is a really big streamer, and
I'll meet you at the hatch. That's right! You can...
Shroud in FPS was a really big one.
Because you guys skipped the tutorial.
Yeah, I don't have anything. All right, I'm bringing a pistol, bro.
Ninja and who's the other guy I'm thinking of? Dr. Disrespect is a huge one. But all of these streamers, they are either high-level gameplay players or they're entertaining to watch. There is no high-level gameplay in Zephyrus Protocol, and it's not really entertaining to watch because there's a pause feature, and nobody wants to sit and watch a stream that is paused 80% of the time because there's so much micromanagement going on. So immediately that eliminates Twitch from possibilities as content creation. Now in short form, 10 seconds to 1 minute content, which is TikTok, Instagram Reels, and Shorts, usually the content that you see, and especially in RTSs, is explosive gameplay, artillery strikes, epic units, or quick comparison of units and breakdowns, which if you just type in like AoE2 unit versus unit, I don't know if this will actually bring it up, but there's a lot of videos that like compare, Elite Samurai versus Elite Teutonic Knight, which one's going to win. That's a curious piece of content. Like that creates curiosity as to like what is the best piece of or best unit to use in a given situation, and that allows a content creator to create content. Currently, there's mechanics in Zephyrus Protocol which eliminate this. It eliminates the possibility of creating this type of content, which in the game is showing the stats of the guns and stuff. So like if you buy a gun for a unit, it tells you what the damage is and the fall off, which just immediately alleviates that problem and that question and that curiosity. So why would I make content on that when I can just figure it out in the game mechanic? My recommendation for the developers is remove that mechanic, because then it allows the units comparisons to be a thing. Now, currently, airstrikes and explosive gameplay is not an option in Zephyrus Protocol because it's just kind of lackluster and there's no real focus on it. There's also no epic units. There's also no reason to do content for comparison units. And also there's massive grand battles, which would be like bar Beyond All Reason, which isn't really a thing in Zephyrus Protocol, so that eliminates short form. And then lastly, medium form content, tutorials, and starting builds and unit comparisons, civilization comparisons, and RTSs. You can do tutorials, but there really hasn't been too many pieces of content on tutorials and starter builds, so you do have an option here for starter builds and tutorials, but that's mid-form content. That's content that's after marketing. So the person's already bought the game and is already playing it, and now they're looking for solutions for problems in the game. So this is not marketing content. This is post-sale content, which is not what we're going to talk about or focus on in this video. And then lastly, there's full gameplays and competitive matches. Full gameplays is really the only marketing content that is existing out there. So when people search Zephyrus Protocol, basically they're just the only content out there for them to decide whether they want to play the game is full gameplay content. And there's also not a lot of content creators producing content for that right now. So right now, there's no type of content that can be produced for Zephyrus Protocol. And this is one of the first things that I noticed when getting interested in the game and starting to play the game. And then as I played the game, I started to see why this is the case. And this is where we get into the actual like feedback of the game mechanics and current state of the game. So the question is, what is holding Zephyrus Protocol back from marketing and scaling and growing the game and more users? Well, there's 4 things that I've identified or seen as a content creator as to why this is. And one is there's no clear player fantasy. Like, I don't really know. Yes, it's a zombie game. That's the genre, and it's an RTS. But like, what's the player experience? What is the fantasy I'm doing? Am I a grand strategy commander building an industrial complex like Bar, or am I a micromanaging platoon level, squad level, micromanaging hotkey ability player? Or am I calling in epic airstrikes and doing massive ordnance drops like Helldivers? Like, there's no clear fantasy that I'm playing in. It's kind of trying to do a whole bunch of stuff at once. Or is it a direct control unit like taking over the operators and doing that? and because it's trying to do so many things, it's not really excellent at any of them. Now, the second thing is the pausing of the game is also damaging marketing growth tremendously. As a content creator, when you can pause the game, it eliminates streaming, and it also makes it really hard to make long form or any other types of form of content, because then as a content creator, it's irritating for me because I have to go into the edit and I have to cut out the pause pieces, or I have to have my editor cut out the pause pieces, which is just extra labor and work that has to be done on the content creation. And it just overall takes away from the ability to market the game. But more importantly, it also takes away urgency for the player. It takes away the stress of the game. So in a game like Helldivers, which is fast-paced, or Tarkov, which is slow and then explosive and then slow again, the urgency actually is a good thing. So stress in a game makes players more sticky, and it allows people to make mistakes, because you actually want players to make mistakes so that they replay the game. If I can just pause the game and eliminate my stress and just think through the problem, there's no reason for me to continue playing the game, because I'm just going to master that exact moment and figure out the perfect thing to do. And then why would I play the game over again when I've just already done everything and I've mastered it and played it? And that's kind of where I'm at right now in the current state of the game. Like, there is new content, the birds and stuff coming out, which I'll play as new content rolls out. But then you get into power creep. So power creep is basically where you're constantly releasing more units and more gear and more stuff to keep the player base interested in the game. And power creep is a really bad thing to get into, especially when you're a small development team and you don't have a lot of cash and you're constantly having to produce stuff to keep people sticky in the game. The way that you get a game to be sticky is you make it more difficult, and you also create more of a rock, paper, scissors a community experience where you're making friends and your friends are playing the game, and then you're showing up every day or every week to play games with them, like in Beyond All Reason or something like that, or Rust is a good example of that. But because there's a pause feature in the game, it really hinders the game a lot. Now, you don't necessarily have to take the pause feature out. What you do is you just make it slow-mo. So slow-mo, if you remove pause and just turn it to slow-mo, then it still maintains stress and urgency, and you need to figure stuff out quickly, but it gives new players a little bit more breathing room, and it also keeps things moving for content creation, so it's a little bit more tolerable for content creators to make content. Now, the main reason that there's a pause feature is because that there's a lot of micromanagement in the game, and I think this is one of the biggest hindrances of the game right now for new users and content creation, is you have to pause the game. Like, the pause feature feels like a feature that has to be there because there's so much stuff to handle. But the reason that there's so much stuff to handle, I think, is because there's no clear core player fantasy that is being focused on with the game. And if you select exactly what is the core fantasy that the player is going to be experiencing playing my game, and you eliminate the other ones and you build your mechanics around that core feature, that core experience, I think that would eliminate the need for the pause feature. So you see how the reason that I started this video and went through all that, TED Talk spiel is to explain this, because once you select the core fantasy, it then allows you to align all of the mechanics of the game into that direct experience, so that it overall makes it more pleasurable for the player, but also easier to make content for content creators. And then lastly, 3 and 4, there is no ability for content creators to create content, as I covered just a little bit ago. And there's also no clear early, mid, and late game phases in the game, which is also a standard core thing with RTSs. Right now, there's no power spikes. I guess you can get the Apache or the AC-130, but mid-game, there's no real power spikes that occur. And I think that's also the reason because there's no rock, paper, scissors in the game. So when the game launches, the game just immediately throws all of the different types of zombies at you, from brutes to spitters to normal infected. And then I think, the juggernauts don't show up till day 2, but I think creating more diverse, different types of zombies that do different things and they have to be countered in different ways creates that rock, paper, scissors effect. And I know the birds are coming out, so the birds are going to throw in a new mechanic and a new, thing that you have to manage. But again, the game's already extremely complex and there's a ton of micromanagement that already has to be done. And the civilian evacuation mechanics aren't even in the game yet, which is just going to be more stuff that needs to be micromanaged. So it's creating complexity and depth. That the current direction that it's going is it's not creating complexity in width by rock, paper, scissors scenarios or different civilizations or different factions or different units. It's all just complexity. And that creates a high skill ceiling, which deters new users from coming in and playing. So that's the 4 core things that I see really holding back the game from a marketing perspective and a user experience perspective. But now let's get into the actual direct feedback that I have for the game. But before I even talk about this, I think I'm just going to select what I think would be the best core fantasy or player experience for the players to have, and why that fits content creation really well for marketing. I think that the core thing here is actually ordnance, is actually explosive call-ins from the radiomen, very similar to Helldivers. And the reason for that is purely for marketing reasons, because when you can make artillery strikes and epic units feel epic and feel awesome, it makes really great content. It's very easy to market that stuff, and it's very easy to clip it in a 10-second unit. So now, if we select the core feature, or the core player fantasy to experience, now we can begin to talk about the direction of the mechanics and the gameplay experience and where it should go to amplify that and make it more pleasurable. So I've got a long list of things that I've wrote down. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'll put them in a post that kind of covers all of it. But focusing on the biggest ones, and when it comes to marketing, when it comes to making content, not on post sales when people already bought the game and they're looking for content, but content that actually drives marketing and drives new users coming into the game. I think short form, 10 to 15 second clips is probably the perfect thing. It's the best way to grow and scale content for video games in 2026. And we're going to focus on that as the main point. So assuming we're going towards the airstrikes and the heavy ordnance and artilleries and call-ins and stuff, and also maybe epic units as the core mechanic of the game, we can start with the Moab. So $80,000, and it has this blast radius. But when it comes to call-ins and marketing, making content that's visually appealing, let's just watch the Moab. So yeah, just a C-130 flies in. There's no sound design. There's no effects. There is that visual, and then that's it. I don't feel anything. I feel like, a real Moab would level this entire city. A real Moab is like a 1 mile square radius explosion. And I feel like I just spent $300 on like a mortar for fireworks, like a giant 100 millimeter mortar, and then I fire it off and it's like a pop rock, like it's like one of those pop things you throw on the ground, the poppers. Like it's not there. There's no visceral feeling. There's no emotion there. It's not satisfying. And then the airstrike's pretty nice. The A10 gun run, you can't even tell that there's no brrr. You don't have the A10, epic sound of an A10 coming in. It barely makes a dent. There's no rockets or anything. It's all just kind of, it's there mechanically. It's there for a purpose or a utility, and you can feel that it's just there for utility. There's no visceral feeling or excitement that comes from it. And then lastly, we have the gunship. So the gunship is by far the best call-in in the game, and it gives you a UAV and it gives you a ton of view. But it's just another utility that is called in, and it does a lot, but I don't feel it. don't feel it as a player. It's just a tool to be used. In my opinion, the operator mode, this is not really a usable feature in the game. It's just another added feature that, it's a novelty. You can come in here and you can do stuff with it, but this guy's not going to do much on the overall scheme of the game. He's not going to have a high impact on what's going to occur in the game. I don't think this is a good feature. I don't think this is a feature that really adds to the experience as a player. I never use the operators. I never play them at all. And I know there's probably like a direction that the developers want to take the operators and fleshing them out and improving them and stuff. But there's so much micromanagement to do in the game that it's hard to even think about using the operators, because every second you're in the operator mode, you're losing map awareness, you're losing the ability to, there's a net loss for using an operator, because you can't be building, you can't be controlling your units, you can't be managing the battlefield. You have to basically lose all that, and because of that cost of using the operators, it's usually just bad to use them. Now, it's not to say that the mechanic and the concept of taking control of a unit is bad. It's just, is it aligned with the player fantasy, with the North Star, with the core pillars of the game? So what I personally would love, what would be amazing, is if I could call in this AC-130 and I'm controlling the AC-130. That allows me to continue to see the map and still be in RTS mode and still be seeing what's going on and having situational awareness, but direct control and ability to handle the map. And like, give me the Call of Duty 4 experience of an AC-130 and like everything. Like, if the one thing that would make this game easily marketable, like to make some really quick, great short forms, 10-second clips, give me an AC-130 with night vision and zoom and the 105mm and the minigun and the auto cannon. Make them all fire at the same time too, and let me mow down hordes of zombies. And if you just take that one mechanic and you master it and you make it visually appealing, and sound design is also a huge thing here too, is getting good sound design, like having radio chatter in the background and making it feel like I'm in an AC-130 hovering over a city that is infected with zombies and we have to quarantine and eliminate them. And just a 10-second clip of that, I guarantee you somebody is going to see that on TikTok or see that on YouTube or Instagram, and they're going to go, what the fuck is this? Is this a zombie game? Is this a zombie RTS where you're flying an AC-130? And you're like, what is going on here? What am I watching right now? I guarantee you it's going to pique a massive amount of interest and curiosity from a marketing perspective. Now, you still have to have content and stuff that funnels them and feeds them into and nurtures them into eventually saying, oh yeah, this is a game I do want to play, and then going and buying the game. And then they go into the sales content side where they're going to start looking up content on how to play the game and all that. You have to have that stuff fleshed out. But that's the where the game is at currently. I think that's the quickest way to get content rolling, to market this game, to drive users into the game. Now, with that said, there's other stuff that we can go into as far as the state of the game, but personally, that's what I think would be to spend the next month and just master the AC-130 mechanics, get a really amazing experience, change the Moab, get the visual looking really clean, make it epic, make like a alarm or a warning system going on, have a countdown or something, and make it even have like a low-level ICBM, like a nuclear explosion that has radiation that like blocks off an area for a little bit. There's a game I recently just saw in YouTube that it's called a Nuclear Option, and it's a flight sim, but it's very different. I think Drewski just launched a video on it. I think it was Drewski talking about this game.
I found you guys suggested it. It's pretty cool. We're jumping in. What? I play a lot of military and flight simulator games on this channel, but I don't think we've ever had nukes in them. Like in most flight sims, you just kill the enemy.
But he talks about how the developers of that game took an entirely different approach to flight simulators and combat simulators. That, as a huge flight sim guy, I fly helicopters and airplanes. My dad was a pilot, and I've been playing flight sims since like the very first flight sim simulator in like 2000. Every flight simulator, every combat simulator since the dawn of flight simulators is the exact same. It is hyper realistic, real development, like they're trying to recreate the cockpits of the F-16 and the F-15 and all this stuff. And yeah, it's really cool. And there's like DCS, but man, it's so complicated. The depth of the game is so complicated to get good at any one flight simulator. And that makes it really hard as a player of flight simulators to get into a new flight simulator. Because as soon as I see one, I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna have to learn all these new things around this specific game and the mechanics and how it works. And it turns people off and it makes people not want to play the game. Not because it's a bad game or that they didn't do a good job at their aim. It's just depth. It's complexity for the sake of complexity. And in business as a whole, here's a core concept in business development. You basically don't want to start a business unless you can dominate the thing that you're doing. And in flight simulators, combat simulators, the game who dominates that is DCS. If you're going to play a flight simulator and a combat simulator, just play DCS. Period. Every other game is trying to compete with DCS, and they're the king dog, and they own the genre. So anything other than that, you're not really standing out when it comes to gameplay and uniqueness. Now, on the flip side, if you go watch videos on Nuclear Option, the developers just said, screw that. We're not making depth. We're going wide, and we're going to make unique airplanes that don't exist, and they're going to be similar to airplanes, but their design and their mechanics are going to be around the experience. Like, if you're flying a gunship, it's going to be a gunship, and it's going to be an awesome gunship. And if you're flying a stealth fighter, it's going to be a stealth fighter, and it's going to be an awesome experience as a stealth fighter. But it's not going to be complex. And they also throw nuclear bombs, low ordnance nuclear bombs into the game as just a unique, like, it's also for marketing too. Like, what is this? Like a flight simulator with nuclear explosions? What am I watching right now? And that gets interesting. It's interesting. It's like nobody's done that before. What RTS has a nuclear bomb in it? I've never seen an RTS with a nuclear bomb in it. Put a nuclear bomb in here. Put a low ordnance, like 1.5 kiloton small nuclear bomb. Put it in an artillery gun. Put it in a cruise missile or something. Just make it cool. Doesn't matter what it is. Just make it cool. Make it visceral. Make it the audio and the visuals amazing, and it will market your game. People will see it and they'll be like, "What am I watching right now?" So. That's the ordnance side. And then we can also talk about like epic units, or, you know, in Company of Heroes, you've got the King Tiger. In Beyond All Reason, you have the Juggernauts and Sol Invictus and the Thor tank. But if you play Bar, there's almost no hotkeys and micromanagement. It's all just macro. It's all just throwing waves at the enemy. And I don't think that's what we want to do here in Sephiroth Protocol. I don't think that's the aim of the developers. But you see that they stick to the core pillar of their game and the fantasy that they're creating for the player very cleanly. There's only like 2 units in Bar that have any type of ability or hotkey. One is the Thor tank, and I can't even remember if there's another one that has... The Thor tank's the only one I'm thinking of. I think there's one other. But the Thor tank, it's there as a micro unit for the players that are good at micromanagement. And if you're a really good player at Bar and you can micromanage, you can do macro and micro, you could turn the entire tide of a battle with like 3 Thor tanks, because you can fire off the EMP, and I think there's another thing that it can do. And because they pay homage to micro RTS players, like there is the ability to do micro in Bar, if you want to. It's just not the focus. And for those that can micro, it's great because they can flex their ability, but it's not creating complexity and depth. It's still a very complex width game, but the core philosophy and focus is the player experience and being very focused on what that is. So you can do that with this game. You can put epic units in here of whatever you want. You can get creative with it and just make sure that it's epic. Make sure that it's visceral. Make sure that it feels good, that it's a good clippable 15-second short form for content. But if you're going to do that, we have to talk about micromanagement. The current state of the game, there is so much micromanagement that has to go on from, helis is one, not being able to set waypoints with helicopters. So I don't have a helicopter out here right now because I think they died. But I have to, I can't shift and hold down shift and right click and put a bunch of waypoints down. Like if I select these units right here, these soldiers, if I hold down shift and I right click, I can't set waypoints to go back and forth. They're just going to go to where I set them, and that's it. And that's, shift, right click, and hold and set waypoints is a core feature in any RTS. And that would allow me to micromanage helicopters. If I had a helicopter, right now, if you have a little bird and you stop for 1 second, it's dead, which means you have to hit the pause feature. And now we're in pause, and now everything there's no stress, there's no urgency. It's boring for streaming, and it's hard to make long form content on YouTube because nobody wants to sit here and watch me pause and think through what I'm doing. So I have to pause the game, do my building, and do whatever I need to do, and then go back to micromanaging my helicopter and keep it alive. If I can just hold down shift and this is what I do. This is exactly what I do. I put a bunch of waypoints down. I'm going to go over to my base. I know for the next 30 seconds that I can manage what's going on here. And then I can go back to my helicopter it's still moving and it's not dying. And then I can go back to micromanaging it. And that allows me to have higher level skill or higher level gameplay. It allows me to develop my skill set as an RTS player and try better. And if I lose it, then I can improve and do that. But there's no way to improve right now just because of a simple mechanic of not having shift and setting waypoints. Another big one is camera movements. So if I set my barracks there to 1 and this barracks here to 2, if I hit 1, I'm not looking at my barracks. The equation here, the camera should be here. It should be looking at the barracks. It should be it's Pythagorean theorem equation, the triangle of calculating that in code. But it's simple things. And I know the game's being ported over. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be developed, and maybe this was a feature that was working in this legacy, but it's all these small little things that really add to the depth of complexity to the game. And then we have the individual hotkeys for each unit. So the snipers, they can be set with a Z. The engineers, if you're running laws, you have to hit G to switch to the laws, and then you can't tell what weapon is out with the engineers, or if they have their laws or their regular guns out. So there's no indicator. So you have to constantly zoom in and make sure that the right weapons are set for the unit. And then you've got the operators, which have their own unique abilities that each one can do. And then you have the soldiers. Do I have any soldiers over here that have grenades or grenade launchers? And then you have to unlock the grenade launchers, and then you have to micro them. And if this game wants to be a micromanagement RTS, that's fine. If that's the direction that the developers want to go, that's great. There's plenty of games that have been super successful as micromanaging ability hotkey games, but that's what it needs to be. It needs to be focused on that, and everything else needs to be stripped away and serve micromanaging a hotkey ability gameplay. I personally don't think that would be good for marketing and content creation because it's a macro game. It's a very large map. This is 200 units. And I know that could be different in a multiplayer, when you've got 5 or 16 people in the game and you can more manage your little set, units that you're doing. So if that's the direction that the game's going to go, then you can do that. But then, are we playing a multiplayer? Is this a multiplayer focused game now, or is this a single player base building zombie horde containment game? Because if it's focused on single player and people that are playing single player, they're gonna have a really hard time micromanaging. So if, again, going back to my suggestion that we focus on heavy ordnance and focus on epic units, if that's the focus, completely eliminate the abilities, completely eliminate, let snipers just set up their sight lines automatically, let engineers automatically go to rockets when like a juggernaut is appearing, like just have it coded so that when the juggernaut shows up, walls start firing, or special units, and just let assaults throw grenades when zombies get too close, and let grenade launchers fire when they need to be fired, and set the cooldown to a longer time or something. And then also another huge thing on micromanagement with towers is constantly having to select the towers and buy. Nobody's ever going to use the assault rifles. Like nobody's going to use this. This is $300. It's well worth it to just upgrade. So just remove this. Make the towers MGs and leave it as is. I don't need to see this window. I don't need to come in here and scroll through and click this. And if I want to upgrade it to a sniper rifle, which is rare, but sometimes I do, just make it a hotkey. Just put a hotkey down here that is upgraded to sniper rifle, or let the engineer just build a sniper tower versus an MG tower. And now I've watched myself play games, and I have had to open this menu 60 plus times to do this. And this is not fun. This is not an experience that I want to experience. There's no skill here. This is just like this is like playing SimCity and building a city and micromanaging the city. It takes away experience from the user and fun. So that's kind of my take on this. And again, this is all my suggestions ultimately are focused from a marketing perspective on getting more users and more revenue for the development team to ultimately make a better game. If you have an extra $200,000 in revenue, you can split that among the team, or you can hire more developers, or you can start outsourcing stuff, or have people that are doing work on the side, or like contractors. But overall, if the more money you make, the better game you're going to have, and the more you can develop. And if you guys do want to develop a game studio and roll out more games, then revenue helps with that, and knowing how to do the marketing and stuff. But there's a lot more that could be like covered on this specific thing. Again, I don't know the direction the developers really want to take as far as the core fantasy or the user experience, the player experience. These are just some guy on YouTube talking about this stuff. But that's my take on, how to market a game. So the last thing I want to leave with is that, I know as somebody who coaches marketing for people, that oftentimes people get intimidated by marketing and they think it's really complex and it's hard. They don't want to learn that and yada, yada, yada. And it's stressful. And, you guys are game developers. You're not marketers. Trust me. Getting 1 million views on short form is easy. It is so easy to get 1 million views, a million new eyes on your game very easily. It just has to be thought through, and you have to know what to do and how to do it. But if you have even 5 or 10 content creators that are making content on this game, and they make short form, and it's an AC-130 gunship, operator mode, taking control of it, mowing down zombies, and again, it has to look good. Like, don't have the camera like way out here where they're shooting stuff. It needs to be zoomed in. Like, I need to be seeing the zombies here and mowing them down so it's visually appealing on a recorded short form. But it's not hard. 1 million views on short form is not hard to do. And again, you don't need 1 million customers. You just need 0.5%. If 1 million new eyes go on this game and you get 0.5%, that's 5,000 new customers. That's $100,000. I know it might sound crazy. It might sound unrealistic. I can tell you, making content for 20 years, it is not. It is not unrealistic to do. And more importantly, here's the cool part. When you understand all these mechanics and how marketing works and how content works, and somebody makes a piece of content that ends up blowing up and it gets 1 million plus views, you can contact that content creator and be like, hey, can we like throw you, $5,000 to promote that video? Or you can ask them like, hey, can we use this piece of content and promote it ourselves on our social media? You can just ask them and you get the rights to the content, and you can load the piece of content on your or your YouTube or your social media as the game developer and just run ads on it. Just promote, throw money at it, and you'll probably have a conversion. There'll be a ROAS or a calculation. So $20 for a game it's kind of hard to make a return on advertiser spend with $20 as a price ticket, because your cost of advertising is probably going to be like $10 to $15. So you're only going to make like $5 profit on that sale. And you can drastically increase that by making the game $25 or $30. But again, that is an issue sometimes when it comes to games, because you have a lot of competition. But that is an option that you can do. And if you're selling the game for $20 and you got a ROAS of 2, that's $10 profit per customer. So simple math, if you run that ad and let's say it costs, so let's say $10 per, let's say you got a $10,000 budget, you put $10 per user, so that's 1,000 users times 10,000. You're gonna make 10 grand. So you put in 10 grand and out comes 10 grand. For those of you who are currently playing Zephyrus Protocol, let me know what your thoughts are on this, and specifically the current state of the game and the mechanics and what you feel the direction of the game should be. Leave them in the comments. And developers that are watching this, if you're Zephyrus Protocol developers, I don't want you guys to take this like negatively. I'm not ripping on the game or anything. I think it's a phenomenal game. It's why I made this video, because I want to see this game succeed. It's a very unique experience and a very unique game, and I want to see it successful because it's fun. I do enjoy it. I guess the last thing I could talk about would be like the different stages of the game: early, mid, and late game, and rock, paper, scissors. We kind of touched on that, but there's more that could be fleshed out there, and especially when it comes to the power management and the income revenue and the tiering of stages of the different doctrines. I think that you should calculate the money that is being made and the money being spent on the units based on where you want the early, mid, and late game to start. So, if you want the early game to be the first 20 minutes, calculate what a person needs to do in the early game to establish map control, calculate how many units there needs to be and how much they cost, and what the average person is going to be building, and then build the doctrines and everything to kind of line out that tier 2 and mid game starts at 20 minutes, and then do the same thing for mid game to like 40 minutes, and then late game, epic units, all that stuff, the blockbusters and the stalemate destroyers come out in late game around 40 minutes, and then just calculate what the average revenue is per game, and what it needs to cost to do all that stuff, and the power management and all that. That's my take on like the stages and also the rock, paper, scissors. So like, right now, it's very linear. It's very singular. It's complex in depth, but there's different zombies juggernauts need to come out maybe in tier 2, and maybe another type of zombie comes out in tier 2 around the 20-minute mark, and then the players have to plan. They have to like think and know that like around this time, this is when this is going to be happening, or the number of days to get to that. So yeah, but long story short, I think this game has a tremendous amount of potential, and I don't want the developers to take this the wrong way, that like I'm just ripping apart the game. Ultimately, this video is to help developers, and if other developers watching this that are developing games, learn the basics of marketing and how to market a game so that you can make more revenue and make a more successful game, and eventually a game studio. So let me know what you guys think.